911 operators of Reddit. What are some of the funniest things someone has called in for? I had a guy call in on 911 because he was concerned about a seagull he thought was injured in a Chipotle restaurant parking lot. Apparently while on the phone, he tried to pick up or check on the bird, at which point the bird started squawking. Then he started freaking out and I started having trouble telling them apart. Then there I could hear what might have been wings flapping. A brief silence. And suddenly the guy started hyperventilating and screaming he needed an ambulance because he was having a heart attack and that the bird flew off. I wasn't sure if he was being serious, so I got him over to EMS as a precaution. Upon transfer and getting EMS on the line, he got very quiet and said, "I think I'm okay. I'll call you back later," and hung up and would not answer on call back. I still wonder about Steven Seagal when I drive by a Chipotle. My dad used to be in charge of the 911 call center. One particular story I remember was in like 09, some guy called asking how much weed he could have in his car while driving through the state. They went back and forth for maybe 20 minutes of the guy repeating and rephrasing the question and my dad just responding none. None. The answer is none. I just certified as a call taker and got mandated for overtime, of course, on my first shift. Policy was if someone insisted they saw something, we take it as face value and enter the call. Well, this lady called me just after midnight and swore she saw a chupacabra on the west side of Orlando and insisted in an officer doing an area check. Not too long after that, a coworker was in on his night off and left the building. He called 2 minutes later saying he saw a kangaroo hopping down the street. I can't make this speep up. I've had to call animal control about a chupacabra that was killing all the chickens in my neighborhood. I had caught a glimpse of it a few days before in my backyard and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Then I saw it walking down the street in broad daylight and was able to catch a picture and confirm that I wasn't crazy. They told me they had tons of calls about it and to tell all my neighbors to lock up our chickens, bring in any outside animal food, and that they had live traps set for it all over. Spoiler alert. It was a coyote, completely bald from mange and so skinny you would never recognize it. I was glad they already had calls about it. I knew it was not okay whatever it was, but I had no idea how to describe it aside from El Chupacabra. Thankfully they knew exactly what I was talking about. That's pretty much the accepted belief of what a chupacabra actually is, aside from those that actually believe in them. Basically feral dogs, wolves, or coyotes that have very bad mange and possibly rabies in some cases. I briefly worked as a 911 operator. When someone called on a non-emergency line, we always answered the same way: blank, police and fire. This is a recorded line. How can I help you? We get a call on that line. I answer as usual and a very inebriated sounding woman asks the following. Hypothetically speaking, if my boyfriend had a few grams of cocaine and I called the police to tell them about it, would either of us get into any trouble? Ma'am, you're calling the police on a recorded line. I know. But what does the law say? I don't know, ma'am. I'm not a police officer. Would you like me to send one? Yes, please. She gives me her address. An officer responded, but there were no arrests. That one had me scratching my head. Well, she did say it was hypothetical. Numerous calls where someone has handcuffed themselves to a sofa during coitus and lost the key. If it's not busy, this seems to draw most available officers. Not me, but a coworker. A person was pleasuring themselves with the handle of a scissors and it got stuck. Scissor me timbers. When I was a fire dispatcher, I had to send a squad to remove a cock ring. So there's that. I'm just trying to visualize how they managed to get that off the poor bastard. Did they use bolt cutters or something? They just blasted him with cold water from the hose until it fell off. Had a grown man calling in about a monster trying to get into his son's room. He's the right kind of frantic where I know it's not a mental health crisis, but I still couldn't figure it out. Well, here's a Middle Eastern male with a real thick accent, and I was having a hard time understanding. So he gave the phone to his son. The monster had climbed a tree and was at his bedroom window. And it was as big as his dog. And it has hands like him but tiny. Wait, what? Right there I told the kid to see if it had rings on his tail. Yes. They had just moved to America a month ago and had never heard of raccoons. I couldn't mute myself fast enough and the father heard me laughing. I think that's what helped calm him down. I explained what a trash panda was and welcomed him to our wild jungle. Oh, that's adorable. A man requiring extrication from an Under Armour insulated shirt. His shoulder popped out of the socket while he was pulling it on. It was halfway on / halfway off, and his arm was locked and dislocated. Edited to @ so you don't think I'm awful. He was laughing and said I would have driven myself to the hospital, but I would have had to drive with my arm out the window. Wow, this happened to me when I was in dance class a few years back. I was wearing a sports bra and my leotard. When I got to the hospital, they cut me out of both BC. I was also stuck, then relocated my shoulder. Was bummed to lose that Leo. Also, that man was tougher than me. I certainly wasn't laughing. Ha. Also, that man was tougher than me. I certainly wasn't laughing. Ha. As the husband of someone who can sublux half her joints on command and has probably dislocated a few more than a dozen times in her life, it's not unlikely that he'd done it so many times prior that he was either used to the pain or didn't feel it as much anymore. A little kid called 911 because he wanted the cops to come arrest his brother. You see, their mom said that the caller's brother was supposed to share the Legos, but he wasn't sharing. The caller's brother said that he was playing with all of the Legos, which wasn't possible. There were too many Legos for one person to play with all of them at once, argued our caller. Therefore, his brother was a liar, a jerk, and a turd, and we needed to come and arrest him. We had a high degree of confidence that this wasn't a coded request for help, so we asked to speak to an adult, confirmed that there was no distress, and closed the case. Share your Legos, kids. P.S. If your kid ever calls 911, don't get mad at them. We want them to call 911 if they think they should. We would much rather have them call 911 for something silly than have them not call when they should, because they are afraid they'll get in trouble. My sister still talks about the time that she and our cousin were home with the babysitter. They called 911 because the babysitter was being mean. She was just being an experienced babysitter and not bowing to their every whim. Police came. My mom was called in from work from 45 minutes away. I don't think that anyone was upset, but they certainly weren't amused. Lady called in because she thought Willie Nelson was having a cardiac arrest in her trailer and she needed an ambulance. I started giving her CPR instructions, and come to find out, when paramedics got there, she was doing compressions on the couch cushions. I'll never smoke weed with Willie again. I was a 911 dispatcher years ago, but had two specific calls that still make me laugh. One, a frazzled mother called, cause her 6-year-old had gotten into the roof and she couldn't get him down. She kept screaming about how we need to because she was worried he would get hurt. But because he had done that before, and last time he peed in the air vents. This was before weed was legal in my state, but a college kid called asking for an ambulance. He was super worried that he was having an allergic reaction to the weed he just smoked. When asked about his symptoms, he said, "I just can't stop eating Cheetos." Cheetos are hard to stop eating, even when you don't smoke weed. Can confirm. Source: I've never used weed, and I could eat an entire large bag of Cheetos if I don't pace myself. A guy called in because his dog had bitten a seagull and was now acting strange. He demanded we find the bird, capture it, and test it for rabies. The whole circumstances were vague, and he was unwilling to listen to reasonable advice like that birds can't carry rabies. He had the audacity to file a complaint when informed we would not be doing what he wanted.